So, welcome again to Wednesday Night Slides number 80. Um, and we're going to get started tonight with something that happened just after the previous slideshow back at the end of September. The United Railroad Historical Society of New Jersey has a shop facility in Boonton. And once a year, they clean it up and have it as a museum for a day. So we're going to go and do that. They do a night photo session, usually the night before the big event. So on the way up to Boonton, I stopped off in Bridgewater and caught NJ Transit's veterans unit, which you should be seeing on the screen, right?
Correct.
Okay. Once again, if anybody has any comments or questions, feel free to jump in. You can unmute yourself, ask your question. No problem with that. So here it is with the complete with the Screaming Eagle on the front going through Bridgewater. And then it goes as far as Raritan, which is just a couple towns to the west, and turns back. And this is actually the return trip with it pushing a little more broadside to minimize the fact that the headlight is not on when it pushes. So I don't like backwards trains without headlights. Then I scooted down to Manville, which is the old Lehigh Valley main line, Norfolk Southern now, and got a eastbound NS freight there. Then it was off to Boonton for the night photo session. We started off with a Pennsylvania Railroad GG1, along with a Railway Express Agency truck on the left and an old car on the right. New York Central E8 4083 was there, painted in the century green, an experimental scheme that got applied to, I believe, only 4 E8s. But this was one of them that actually got that paint scheme back in the day. So it's authentic. Also on hand was URHS's ex New Jersey Transit, New Jersey DOT 3 Lackawanna U34CH number 3372. Nicely cosmetically restored, not operable yet. NJ Transit sent over its Conrail Heritage unit, put it on display there. And then a pair of Jersey Central Jeeps were there as well. Now you can see that the dots in the sky, that's rain starting to fall. So we grabbed all the lights and put them inside undercover, bagged them up actually, put the photographers undercover inside the shop, and then did some shots looking out. Here we see these two guys here are actually Jersey Central veterans, Walt Switz and Tom Gallo. And they posed for a couple of shots along with the GP7. We got them to pose for a few shots. Now, this was an alternate angle. We weren't going to shoot this until the rain drove us inside. So we had the wheel chocks on this side of the unit, which would have been out of the shot of the main photo, but they're right in front for this photo here. Um, however, if you look at those two wheel chocks near the front of the lower right there, a couple of lassos in Photoshop and they just went away. So that's a couple of the fun things you can do. Here's the U34 and the NJT Conrail Heritage Unit. And that wrapped up our night photo session up in Boonton. We're going to jump now to this past Saturday, October 25th, when I had a fairly busy day planned out getting around. Tried to hit as much as I could in the last bit of fall foliage that I could find, which wasn't a whole lot, actually, as it turns out. But I started off that morning up in Bern, Pennsylvania, near Hamburg. 2102 was making one of its North Reading to Jim Thorpe runs. And this is before it gets to Port Clinton for its passenger stop there. I used the passenger stop at Port Clinton to get ahead of it, got at Dreyersville. And then over to Zaner's, which is just below Tamaqua. There were a lot of Mennonites out, including like vans of Mennonites chasing the train around. Just watching it go by. Once again, something I wouldn't put in the magazine or anything, but just for fun. Those wires are bugging me a little bit. So I use Photoshop's find distractions tool to find wires and it zapped them.
Yeah, that tool works really nice.
Yeah. This is the standard shot of Zaner's, the more three-quarter shot. And then from there, I went up to hometown and got it one more time. It moves right along. I started off the chase. It left North Ready at 9 o'clock. My first shot was around 9:25 or so at Burn. By 11 o'clock, the chase is over. So from there, I headed over to Kempton, Pennsylvania, to the Wanamaker, Kempton, and Southern. They were running pumpkin trains. You see one of their one of the three, I think, steam engines they have, all small tank engines, none of which run. I'm not sure when number two last ran. I've never seen it under steam. And so other stuff they have around there, including this I think it's a U.S. Air Force locomotive, but Lehigh and New England had similar locomotives. So WKNS painted theirs in Lehigh, New England. And then the 1 o'clock train went out. I chased it. This shot here is actually coming straight out of the sun. Northbound train. One thing, though, that the sun will do is if you got any kind of color at all, the backlit leaves will sometimes pop pretty nicely. But here we see their 65 tonner heading north. Notice the consist: caboose, open car, coach. They run around the train at the end of the line, so the caboose is on the end. But going north, it's caboose, open car, coach. Just keep that in mind. And the unit number is 734, like Western Maryland Scenic's 280. At Wanamaker, actually, okay, Wanamaker is the way it is on the railroad. It's always been Wanamaker. The town is officially Wanamakers with an S. For some reason, the railroad dropped the S. But at Wanamaker, they run around the train. And here's the pumpkin patch. This was the 1 o'clock train. It had clouded up big time. So chasing the southbound train was not in the cards for me. Besides, I had to be somewhere else. I wanted to get down to Kutztown, Pennsylvania by 2 o'clock to chase their 2 o'clock, the Allentown and Auburn's 2 o'clock train. So here we see Allentown and Auburn's 2 o'clock train behind an SW1 leaving Kutztown. A little bit of foliage. Once again, we have caboose, open car, coach. This little farm road, I pulled down it, figured I was out of the way, pulled over, got the shot. Somehow, in the few minutes it took for the train to show up here, I wound up with a front end loader, some guy riding an adult tricycle, a horse and buggy, and two other cars, all trying to use this lane all at once, with me trying to get out and go chase the train. Tunnel of trees. And they run around their train at Topton, Pennsylvania. So I didn't chase them back. I wanted to get down to Boyertown, Pennsylvania, to pick up the 3:30 train on the Colebrookdale Railroad. So I scooted down to Boyertown, and when I got there at 3:15, the train was leaving. I'm like, this is weird because it's supposed to be a 3:30 train. But there was a shot on the railroad that I wanted to get. This water tank. It's middle of the woods that the railroad has constructed. I don't believe it's going to be a functional water tank, although they do have a couple of steam engines that will eventually get rebuilt. But it's in the middle of the woods, and I didn't know where it was. I couldn't find it. So I checked in at the railroad office. The nice lady at the ticket window said that it was Saturday, and Saturday's train was 3 o'clock. Sunday's train was 3:30. So that was a error on my part. But then she found somebody who knew where this water tank was and gave me directions to get back to it. It's back a long dirt road, back in, like I said, back in the woods. So I figured the train, I'm looking south here. The train went south. I figured it would run around the train, locomotive would run around and lead the train back north. So I'm here at the water tank waiting and waiting. And then I hear the horns down at the grade crossing, about a quarter mile away. And then right after the grade crossing horns, I hear two more toots on the horn, which usually means the engineer is acknowledging a instructions somebody gave him on the radio. I'm thinking, uh-oh, does that mean they're pushing back and he's acknowledging that the grade crossing is clear and the guy riding on the rear? So I started to formulate how to get down off this hill I was on if the engine wasn't leading. So a few seconds later, the train pops around the curve, open car first. The quickest way down is to go down between the sign and the rails. With the train coming, I couldn't do that. So I had to go to the right of that sign there, around that pile of stuff, around the trees to the right, and popped out at the little dirt crossing in time to get this shot here. This was the only shot I got of the Colebrookdale. From here, I hopped in the car and drove down to Woodstown Central in Woodstown, New Jersey, for their 6:30 train. And here it is at South Woodstown with a former Pennsylvania Rating Seashore Lines GP38 on the point, ready to go down to Fenwick Grove for their pumpkin train. It was by 6:30, things are getting kind of dark. So I'm cranking up the ISO, and here it is just leaving South Woodstown, crossing over Woodstown Alloway Road. They would go down to the Fenwick Grove down in Mannington, which is located inside of a Y. And that's where their pumpkin patch is. So here you see the train arriving at Fenwick Grove. These are all handheld shots. ISO 12,000. And I've been doing most of my noise cleanup now, my digital noise cleanup in Lightroom instead of Topaz Denoise. I find the Lightroom denoise to be pretty effective and a whole lot easier to work with. So while they were there at Fenwick Grove, I did several shots. And some cleaned up better than others. The next day, I went back over to Woodstown Central looking for some fall foliage and got over to Alloway Junction. And here we have their ex-U.S. Army, ex-Virginia Blue Ridge steam locomotive, 060 number 9, heading through Alloway Junction. Once again, we have caboose, open car, and coach in the consist. Seems to be the consist for the fall. This is coming into Fenwick Grove. And then here they turn the locomotive on the Y. The runaround is actually the Y. So if the locomotive leads from Woodstown boiler first, it's going to go back to Woodstown boiler first. Here it comes up the Y. Of course, if it leaves tender first out of Woodstown, it's going to go back tender first. So you got to hope that the direction of the boiler and the time the train runs for light all line up with each other. And this is the return trip going through Alloway Junction. Once again, uh, almost shooting directly into the sun this time of day. But a little bit of color in the trees. That brings me to the big part of the program, the Eastern Canada portion. I took this trip from October 6th to 11th. And I started off by driving up all day, picked up the rental car in the morning, drove straight through, other than a stop in Binghamton for lunch at Speedy uh, and Rib Pit, get some Speedies. Binghamton's nice sandwiches that are really good. And I stopped at Brockville, Ontario, was my first stop after dark. And I got this P-42 DC leading the train. And then my first look at the new Siemens built Venture train sets with a charger on the point. Good looking train sets, actually. This came through. This is Georgetown Rail Equipment's SPS, self-propelled slot machine. It consists of open-end gondolas and a cat excavator riding in the first gon there, and does anything outside of the rails along the right of way. Picks up ties, digs ditches, cuts brush, drops riprap, anything outside of the rails along the right of way. Georgetown Rail Equipment, GREX, is part of Lorem now. Canadian Pacific Local came down through the station, even though this is Canadian National trackage. Another one of the Venture Charger locomotives. And this is the end of the train. The end of the train has these cab cars that actually look pretty decent for cab cars. Nice slope noses. So when they're coming at you, they're not like regular cab cars that look like the butt end of a passenger car, because that's what they are. They actually look pretty decent. Here's our CP local heading back. Next morning, still at Brockville, Canadian National sent this freight through. Light power. P-42 leading LRC coaches. They used to run behind the LRC locomotives. The LRC standing for light, rapid, and comfortable. CN going through the Brockville station. The big sign on the right-hand side there, that shows Brockville's railroad tunnel. Apparently up until, I guess, the 1970s, there was a rail line that actually went right underneath Brockville through a tunnel. That is going to have to get explored on a future trip. I didn't check it out this trip. And then another Venture train set with the cab car leading. I had looked at my old shots of the Brockville station, and it looked like, well, it didn't look anything like this. So I asked somebody who knew about Brockville if this was a new construction. He goes, no. He says the old station is there. This is the old station. It was covered. All the brickwork was covered by aluminum siding. Guess back in the 70s, if not earlier. And they needed to build a new station, and the townsfolk all revolted. They wanted the old station saved. So VIA actually paid to renovate the old station, pulled off all that aluminum siding, and restored the brick exterior. LRC train set with a freight going by. And a train made up of stainless steel cars built by the Budd Company. This is the other end of that same train, locomotive on both ends. From there, I went up to Smiths Falls, and this is at the new Via station in Smiths Falls. This train pulled up here to this end of the platform and stopped for no apparent reason. I could see the signals around the curve, and he had red signals. So I thought, you know what? If I hop in the car real fast, I can probably get down to the old Via station ahead of him and shoot him there. So I jumped in the car, got down there, and did beat him going past the old Canadian Pacific station. Of course, CP is now part of CPKC with the Kansas City Southern merger. So there's some KCS power also at Smiths Falls. CP switching in Smiths Falls. GP 38-2 doing the work here. KCS unit is an SD70 ACE. Venture train set coming into Smiths Falls, heading towards Ottawa. Folks out walking their dog. And a train coming from Ottawa. Going past the XCP station. The station was built in 1887 and was used by Via until 2010. And right now there is a community theater located inside the station. Same train going away, past some searchlight signals. There were some searchlight signals still around. My favorite locomotives are Canadian Nationals 260s. The moguls are really, really sharp. A close second would be CN's 10-wheelers, the 460s. And here we have one of those on display at the museum in Smiths Falls. And then I gave a program to the Bytown Railway Society that night. They have their museums in the Science Museum in Ottawa. And there's some nice full-size steam locomotives nicely displayed indoors at the museum. This is actually looking through a glass wall into the train room. So I had a great time with the folks at Bytown. And the next morning I got up and went out onto Ottawa's O train, which since my last visit to Ottawa has added an east-west electrified extension to go with a north-south diesel line that I had photographed in the past. Here we see a inbound O train heading towards downtown Ottawa at the Searville station. And then another view of a O train at the Tremblay station, which is right next to the Via station in Ottawa. I was doing this at the tail end of rush hour, and the trains were packed, and the stations are a little difficult to shoot from because they have glass walls at the ends of all the platforms, and the platforms are packed. Thought, you know what, this is a better thing to do on a weekend. Next time I go to Ottawa, I will do this on a weekend when there's less crowds and a little more, a little easier to get around. So I broke off there and I went down to Glen Robertson, heading towards Montreal. Got a venture train set at Glen Robertson. And then I landed in Coteau, which is where the Ottawa line comes into the Montreal-Toronto main line. Once again, searchlight signals. We got a westbound Via train here with LRC cars. And an eastbound freight. These CSX engines came up and did some work in the yard at Coteau and then took off. Another stainless steel bud set, or it could be the same one I shot the previous day, but apparently there's two of these sets out running around right now, or at least when I was there. Going away under the searchlight signals. And another Via train with an F40 in the lead. From here, I didn't have anything really planned, but then I started looking at maps and checking the Lighthouse website. and it looked like the Lachine Front Range Lighthouse had water to the west where the sun would be setting. That's close to downtown Montreal. So I drove over to Lachine, and this is the Lachine Front Range Lighthouse. Now, for those not familiar with range lights are in pairs. One sits behind the other. The one in the rear is taller than the one in the front. And the distance between them can range anywhere from a couple hundred yards to probably a mile, depending on the topography and what they need to do. But anyhow, what happens is ships out in the channel will line up the high and low lights. So when they're lined up one above the other, the ships know they're in the channel. So this is the front range light, which is about 30 feet tall. And tucked back in the woods, in the trees, actually, is the rear range light, which sits 14 feet higher than the front range light. Back in the day, when these were built, this was all marshland around this light. It sat out in a marsh. It's all been filled in now. It's now a park. And this lighthouse here, the front range light, sits on a wharf that was at one time the terminus of the first railroad on Montreal Island. I think I got that right. So I hung around here until sunset. And then on the way back to where I was staying for the night, I went by the Dairy Queen in Lachine, and it has neon. That's kind of cool. So I got a neon sign to add to the collection. Next morning, I'm back in Kodo just after sunrise. Venture set coming in. This guy got stopped. He's actually going to Toronto. He's supposed to go straight through Kodo, heading west. He got stopped. While he was sitting there, they ran a stack train around him. And then a train from Ottawa came out. It would have crossed over his line and gone from the right, just beyond the signals there. Train from Ottawa came out and made a station stop. While he was in the station, the Toronto train finally got clearance to go west. From here, I went to Beaconsfield. Great pedestrian overpass there, and got a variety of things. There's a venture set going west. Canadian National Freight. CN and CPKC now are side by side through here. Another venture set with the locomotive leading instead of the cab car. And then just over a bit on the CP, the XO commuter trains run. This is a train that is pushing out from Montreal. He's on the CP. The CN is in the foreground there. Eastbound via train. Then there was an eastbound XO train coming. I was set up for him, and so I was a little bit out of position to get this westbound via train. But the color in the tree, in the brush by the tracks there, kind of helps that the light isn't quite great. And then the eastbound XO train. From there, it was over to St. Henry, where at the Lachine Canal. Got a venture set with a cab car leading, and a venture set with the locomotive leading. Great place to watch trains. You're almost in downtown Montreal here. Um, uh, got to pay for parking. That wasn't bad. And this train came over. It actually wound up crossing the bridge 5 times. Um, he pulled across the bridge, but he's switching a customer on the right side of the bridge. Um, and the bridge is actually between the signals of the interlocking here. So he had to pull across the bridge to clear the signals every time he wanted to make a move. His third unit is the Sex Iowa Northern locomotive. So he shuffled back and forth a few times. And then from there, I went over to St. Lambert to get Via and XO. Here we see a westbound Via train. And then an eastbound Via train. This is all from the XO commuter platform, which is a paid fare zone, but I just bought a ticket. I was there in the evening. They had an evening ticket for $6. I bought that, so that made me legal to be on the platforms. We have a westbound CN freight. The CN location of Lemoyne is located just at the very end of the St. Lambert XO platforms. XO heading out of town. CN. I was amazed at how busy this was. Big freight trains all mixed in with rush hour XO trains and Via trains. Just busy as all get out here. And then since I had the ticket, which is good for commuter trains, the subway, and the REM rapid transit trains, I hopped on a REM train because it goes next to the Via yard across the river from Montreal, and actually did some night shots out the window of the REM train of the Via shops. The REM trains are brightly lit inside. It's dark outside, and they're double paned. But I put the camera's lens right up against the glass. I still got a lot of reflection around the edges. I had to do a lot of trimming around the edges for these shots here, but it worked out. Next morning, I got up and headed over to Jarry Park, where the Montreal Expos used to play. This is the park station. Here we see an XO train coming in. This is a big transfer point with the subway. And then when this train pulled up and stopped, it just emptied out passengers like you wouldn't believe. It's just an incredible number of people got off this train. I always wanted to get a shot of a train going by Jarry Park. This is obviously a shot you need to do in the wintertime. You need to take my word for it that building off to the in the trees there off to the right is in fact Jarry Park. Jarry Park is now a tennis center, not a baseball stadium anymore, but the facade around and the walls around where home plate used to be are pretty much the same. Not far from Jarry Park is Gary Carter Street, named for the Expos catcher. And here is Jarry Park as it looks now. Basically, you're looking at into the first base side of home plate here. From there, I went over to the Port of Montreal, once again, not far from downtown. There's a train that serves the port every day right around lunchtime that Michael Berry clued me in on. And sure enough, right afternoon, this train came crosses over the Lachine Canal here. In the background there is silo number 5, which is a vestige of Montreal's grain exporting past. It has 206 silos spread out over 3 interconnected buildings. it has been closed for eons, but they're trying to adaptively reuse it if they can figure out what they want to use it for. There's no plans to demolish it, just trying to figure out what to do with it. Got a GP 38-2W leading the port train across. And then about 40 minutes later, it's done its work and it comes back out again and crosses over the canal again. Downtown Montreal, right there in the background. And one of the Viking cruise ships was docked here. I then went over and met John Godfrey. He rode in on Metro, and he took me over to Molson Stadium, where the Montreal Alouettes play in the Canadian Football League. Me being a CFL fan, which is kind of cool. The Alouettes are only tenants in the stadium. They don't own it. They're only tenants and part-time tenants. What surprised me, what John pointed out to me, was a lot of things here, like the Ring of Honor between the first and second levels there. A lot of stadiums have them. For the Alouettes, their Ring of Honor has to be taken down after every game and put back up again before the next game. It's not a permanent feature of the stadium. From here, John and I went over to the Metro to take a ride. So I wanted to shoot some of the Metro stations. And we started off at the Park Station, which is on the blue line, located just above where the blue line goes from, well, on this map here, it's going from northwest to northeast. Montreal's directions are a bit twisted, the city itself. To get accurate directions in Montreal from Montrealites or Montrealers, you got to give the city a quarter of a turn. So basically, the blue line is an east-west line. I think that's right. John will correct me if it's not. And then the orange line, the two spurs are north-south lines. But anyhow, we got on a park, rode the park line south down to Plamondon, where we got onto the Snowden, rather, down to Snowden, which is the end of the blue line, at where the orange line intersects it. Got on, and we're at the Plamondon, which is on there somewhere. And then from Plamondon, we went up to Namur, and I'll botch these names because they're probably mostly in French. Namur's on the orange line out towards the bottom leg, towards the end of it. We stopped there for dinner, had some wonderful smoked meat, and I had poutine, which is great. Then we rode back in on the orange line to I will botch this because it's French, Lionel Gruel. And then changed, went from there to McGill on the green line, McGill to Barry UQAM, which is University of Quebec at Montreal. On the green line, from the university to Bonaventure, which is the central station. On the orange line, from there we rode the Barem, which is that light green line that heads sort of towards the bottom right of the screen. I rode the Rem out and back to Bonaventure at Central Station, up to Jean Talon on the orange, and then back to Park on the blue. So we started off at the Plamondon station, cool station with trains coming out of a tunnel here. And John recommended some of these stations for photography. Wait, I would have just done random stations, not done nearly as well. He recommended 5 really good ones. So what's interesting about the Montreal subway is it runs on rubber tires. That supports the weight. You can see the rubber tires there but it also has standard gauge steel wheels. And you can see the standard gauge tracks there, which it uses for guidance, and it'll ride on the steel wheels going through turnouts at junctions. Then from there, we went over to the Namur station for dinner. Got this shot as we were leaving to go up for dinner. The NPM 10 subway cars you see here, they're built by Bombardier Alstom, and they entered service starting around 2016. This is at Lionel Gruel. 2 lines side by side here. It's not the same line you see on the left and the right. It's two different. It's It's the green and orange lines through here. And this shot here and this shot here are both from the McGill station. Nice open, well-lit station. And contrary to the orange motif you see here, McGill is actually on the green line. Let's see here. Yes. And then this is at the Barrie UQAM, University of Quebec, Montreal station. MR-73 cars here, they're older cars. They entered service in 1976, but the majority remain active. And once again, you can see the rubber tires pretty plainly here. This is a busy station. It's a transfer between the green and orange lines. From the REM, we could photograph the EXO shops through the windows. And 3 generations of Via power here with the Montreal skyline. Got an F40 in the front there. And then you have a P42 leading a Charger in the background there. And then the wires, if I so wanted to, I could just get rid of the wires like that. And then one of EXO's new Chargers they're getting, which are not in service yet. The next morning, the final day I had in Montreal, I met John out at the Panama station on the REM line and got a couple of shots from the overpass there. The REM is really hard to shoot unless you leave the system because it is like you see at airport shuttles a lot, double glass doors. The entire platform is glassed in. So there's no shooting from the platform at all. And a train going east at sunrise. From there, it was over to the to Expo Rail, the Canadian Railway Museum. They got a lot of cool stuff there, including these cars here that ran on the Montreal line between the after the CN electrics were taken off. These cars are all retired now because that entire line's being rebuilt for a REM service that starts up in a couple of weeks. Inside the museum, some cool stuff, snow plows and Alcos. Outside is this narrow gauge locomotive from the lines on Newfoundland. Ontario Northland Alco. In the main museum building is this replica of the first steam locomotive to operate in Canada. John's having trouble unmuting technical, so he can't jump in and correct me if I make any goofs here.
Yeah, I think you got it now. Yeah, that is a replica of the first one in Canada.
Okay. And on the way to the museum, when we got to La Prairie, we actually stopped and photographed this monument dedicated to the first railway in Canada. If I had put this first, I could have told you it was the first railway in Canada without asking John, because it says so right there on the monument. It was Halloween time in the museum. So a lot of the cool stuff out in the front, nicely displayed stuff, had Halloween decorations on, including this big purple spider on the Via FP9. Trainmaster, not many of those left. Actually, this is it. And what's cool about this museum, what I really was impressed me, this is a brand new building here. Well, new since I was there last. And instead of relying on the big ceiling lights you see up top there, they use that kind of studio track lighting instead, which allows for the light to come in more of an angle. So the stuff's more evenly lit all the way down the sides, down to the tracks. Really, really nicely done. Canadian National FPA.
FA.
FA. Thank you. I'm glad John's back here. This park car, Revelstoke Park, John?
Sibley Park.
Sibley Park is being restored. They're doing some really nice work in this. Here's the lounge, pardon the construction stuff here, because this is an active work site. That's the lounge. Other direction, looking at the bar. Down in the observation part of the car. And they've taken everything out of the dome and are redoing that as well. Really nice. Continuing our tour through the museum, we have this Canadian Pacific 440. One of the first in the series of Montreal subway cars is on display there. It is sitting on standard gauge rails on steel wheels, so it counts as a train, even though it has rubber tires. One of the famed box cab electrics from the Montreal line. Cool Canadian National commuter engine. Bi-directional. CP Alco. Now, I mentioned it was Halloween. Here's the snowplow, and it's got the body parts scattered throughout its blades there. It's a little bit on the weird side, but that's okay. CP 10-wheeler. Like I said, I really like the Canadian National 260s, which were Grand Trunk 260s prior to Canadian National. Here we see the museum's 260, but it's got spider webs and skulls all over it. Oh, well. Out on the museum grounds, this Montreal streetcar was running. Car was built by Canadian Car and Foundry in 1928. A Via LRC locomotive. Here's our trolley once again. And under steam was the John Molson 222. It was running through the museum grounds. It is a replica of an 1840s locomotive built in 1970 by, of all companies, Kawasaki built this. And a final look at some of the museum stuff. From there, I hopped in the car and headed south after getting some more poutine at the local Harvey's. And made a stop in Saratoga Springs. While I was there, the southbound Adirondack came in, made his station stop as the sun was setting. Then he pulled forward a little bit and came to a stop because he had a red signal ahead of him. I hadn't carefully checked the Amtrak app, but as it turns out, what he was waiting for was the northbound Ethan Allen Express, which had extra locomotives on it because there was a private car convention up in Burlington or something that weekend or that week. Anyhow,
Is that the Aprico?
I believe it was, yeah. So they're ferrying some extra locomotives up there for that. And then from there, I went home. So that was the end of the Canadian trip, except you thought you would escape without Muffler Man. Sorry, we have Muffler Man. Right before I got to Saratoga Springs, I stopped in Lake George and found this Paul Bunyan Muffler Man holding an axe. Don't go to Lake George on the weekend. It was packed. I had to park sort of illegally to hop out and get these shots. Also in Lake George, not a Muffler Man, but another roadside giant is this Indian. And then about 5 miles west of Lake George at Lake Venaire is a second Paul Bunyan Muffler Man. Now, this guy here is cleverly hiding behind a tree. That's because he is missing his right leg and right arm. The tree disguises the fact that he's missing parts. And that wraps things up. The next program will be November 19th. I try for the last Wednesday of every month, but the last Wednesday in November is Thanksgiving Eve. So it's going to be moved up to November 19th for the next program. And then in December, there's 5 Wednesdays in December, but the 5th one is New Year's Eve and the 4th one is Christmas Eve. So it'll be the 3rd Wednesday in both November and December. So that wraps things up here, folks. Thank you for watching. I'm going to sign off this for the YouTube folks, and then we'll open this up to questions and comments and others. Stand by.